All right. Hi. Welcome again to CAD 263, my online 3D CAD class through Blue Mountain Community College. And we are going to work through the Chapter 4 model. Specifically, we're going to start with the double link. And I'm probably going to do this in 3 sections, but we're going to do the double link, and then we'll do the 2 pins. So maybe 2 sections. We'll see how long each one gets. I don't want to overwhelm you at any one time. So I'm going to work through the textbook. I encourage you to do the same. And right now I am going to share my screen with you so that you can watch and follow along as I work through this activity in SolidWorks. So let me just open up a new file, a new part. You're going to wait a minute. Go. All right, now before we do anything, because I have neglected to customize my settings and I really should do that, I'm going to put my units into inches. It does make it much easier. The other thing I'm going to do is put my screen to plain white. So now, following along, starting on page 4.3, select the front plane and sketch. Now, we're going to make a slot. And there is a set of PowerPoints. I think there's four or five slides for this chapter that I will put on doc sharing on the eCompanion shell that talks about the different types of slots that we can create. For right now, we're going to use a straight slot. And I'm going to put one end at the origin. And I click, and then I drag to the right. And I'm going to click again and then drag down. And I can now click on a green arrow to say OK. Now that I also see that I want 2 holes at either end of my slot, so I'm going to go ahead and get my circle. And I'm going to put 1 circle there on that endpoint, 1 circle here on this endpoint. I'm going to OK out of that. I'm going to pick up my Smart Dimension tool. I'm going to set my radius here at 0.5. Going to set my radius on this circle at 0.325, and actually that's my diameter, not my radius. And I am going to set my distance between these endpoints, and not so coincidentally, between the centers of my circles, at 1.25 inches. Okay, my slot is almost complete. I just need to add a relation between my endpoints so that that circle and that circle are equal. And now we are fully defined. And we can go ahead and extrude this. And we want to use a midpoint or a mid-plane condition so that my front plane is actually the center line of my body. So we're going to make this thing 0.750 inches. And click OK and OK again. And there is my basic shape. Let's go ahead and save this. We are going to use this later, so we want to save it. And we might just as well go ahead and call it, I'm just going to call mine DRF263 Chapter 4, but I'm going to call it actually the double link. And I shortened that a little bit, just enough so that I can tell what it is. All right, on to the next step. Now the next step is to put those bore holes in. And we're going to do that first by clicking on the front face here. That tells SolidWorks that I'm going to do something on that face. Actually, what I'm going to do on that face is sketch. And I'm going to sketch a couple of circles that are centered on my existing holes. So click there on my center, click again. Now this one, you can see that when we started out, the center point wasn't awake. When I hovered on the circle, it woke up, and so now I can click on my center point and drag out. So we will just exit out of there. Now we want to set these circles to be 1/2 inch diameter. And we are going to make them be equal. So select this one and this one. And SolidWorks is pretty smart, so it figures if I'm going to select them both, I maybe want to get a relation, and it pops into that option for me. Actually, it gives me a couple options, but I'm just going to make them equal and select out of there. Now, I'm going to do an extrude cut with these. So I'm going to go to Features, Extrude Cut, and we want to use a blind end condition, and we want that to be 0.150 inches deep. And there are my bore holes. Now here's the new thing. We're actually going to mirror those bore holes to the other side so that we don't have to do that again. What we're going to do is come over here to our feature tree and click the front plane. And then we are going to go find the mirror option, which is right here. And we are going to select Cut Extrude 1 from our feature tree. So if we click on our tree here, whoops, not there, over here, we get Cut Extrude 1. And we're going to mirror that to the other side. And you can see my mirror is down here. So up above here, I've got my feature tree. Down here, I've got my mirror. And I'm going to go ahead and say OK. And if we look at the back side now, and I'm rotating this thing, let's see, that's the Alt left key, that's the Alt right key. So I'm holding Alt and pushing the arrow keys. And what I really want to do is look at the back side. So I'm just going to push my scroll wheel down and pan around, and there we can see I've got holes on both sides. I'll go back up here to my trimetric view, zoom that out a little bit so it's not so big. And the other thing I could have done is gone up here to my display style, and I could have made my hidden lines visible. And so this really turns off my shading and turns my hidden lines on. That's just shaded. This is shaded with edges, and that's a wireframe. Either way, you can see there's a multitude of ways to see what's going on. I'm going to go ahead and put this back to shaded with edges, which is our standard. And I kind of like the dimetric view. You can use whichever view works for you, whichever one you like the most, because we're going to change it here in a minute anyway. So we've got our basic shape, but now we need to add the end slots. If you look at what we're ending up with, so our end shape is that basic link, and it's pictured on page 4-9, and you can see we've got the basic skeleton there, but now we need to slot out those ends. So that's what we're going to do next, and we're actually going to do that by putting in a couple of construction lines, and then again using a different mirror function. So we're going to draw from the top down. So I'm going to click on the top here, and I want to look straight down. So I'm going to click on this normal 2. And you can see at the top of page 4-7, that image is rotated 90 degrees from this one. I don't know that it really matters, but the way that you get there is by holding down the Alt key and hitting the left or right arrow key. And what that does is the picture gets rotated 15 degrees in that direction every time you hit that key. So what we're going to do here is put in a couple of construction lines. And I'm actually going to, there we go, that's better. I just have my Boss Extrude 1 selected. So I'm going to go to Sketch. I want to select this top, and I'm going to sketch on it. And what I want to sketch on it is a center line. So click the down arrow next to the line, and then click on the center line. And we want to go from the midpoint on the left, so click there, to the midpoint on the right, and double click there. Whoops, let me try that again. Click, and then escape. There we go. Now, that's my horizontal center line. Now I'm going to put another center line in. So go back up here, click center line, and we're going to go from the midpoint of that center line up vertically past the end of my shape. So I'm going to click and double click. Okay. Now, I want to rotate this thing so it looks like the picture there, the horizontal picture on the top of 4-7. So again, hold down the Alt key and push I'm using the right arrow key, and that will make my screen look like the image at the top right of page 4-7. What we're going to do now is we're going to turn on dynamic mirroring. And I get there by going up to Tools, Sketch Tools, Dynamic Mirror. Go ahead and select that. Now, whoops, I should be sketching, Tools, Sketch Tools, Dynamic Mirror. We got to tell it what we want to mirror about. We want to mirror about my center line, so we'll click there. And now we're going to sketch a rectangle on one side of my shape here. And the only real important thing is that you make the end of the rectangle be coincident with the edge of your shape. And go ahead and let go and click OK. And you can see what happened. SOLIDWORKS put an identical rectangle on the opposite side. So now let's go ahead and set our dimensions. We're going to set the distance between this line and this line to be 0.3 inches. We are going to set the distance between this line and this line to be 0.230, and that should stretch my rectangles as opposed to move them as long as my other end is coincident with the edge of my shape. And it is. One more thing we need to do, we need to add a relation between these three lines, and this is actually what makes sure that my rectangles are centered, and we do that by setting those lines to be symmetric about that center line. And that makes everything centered. And my sketch is fully defined, so we are now going to extrude this sketch through all. And if we tilt our drawing, you can see that that tells us, and we can actually go to a trimetric view, that shows us that we are going to cut all the way through our whole shape. So we'll go ahead and click OK. And there we are. There's our basic shape. We just need to do a little rounding using the fillet feature. So let's go ahead and save this. And now what we're going to do is we're going to fillet everything except the boreholes. So we're going to click Fillet. We want to set our radius to 0.032 inches. And now let's select our edges. We want to select all of them. except for the holes. So I got my outer curve. There's half of my inner curve. I'm just searching for my hidden edges. You can do this by rotating your shape around as well. Okay, now I want, had him, that guy, and I want that edge, and I want that one, that one. That got my whole inside. Let's get my outside. There we go. So we can pan around a little bit, make sure we've got all the edges that we want. And it looks like we do. So we're going to go ahead and say, okay. And that rounded off all of my edges. Okay, let's save our work. And now let's chamfer those boreholes. And chamfering is kind of like filleting, except filleting adds material, chamfering removes material. And we can chamfer by hitting the down arrow below the fillet and then choose chamfer. We're going to set our chamfer 4.032 inches. And we're going to keep that at a 45-degree angle. And we're just going to select all of our edges on all 4 of our boreholes. So that one, and that one, and that one, and that one, and this one. And go ahead and just select them all. Be careful only to get the edges in your boreholes. They turn blue as you select them, even though the yellow disappears. That's all right. Just don't get the faces, because we can't chamfer faces. We can only chamfer edges. And we'll say, okay. And there we are. That is our completed chamfered and filleted double slot part. All right, now I'll tell you that's at least the 3rd time I did that one. So if you're finding that you're fumbling a little bit with SolidWorks, that's all right. It gets easier with practice. I'm going to actually go ahead and stop this video, and I will come back in a separate session in just a couple of minutes and do the subcomponents. So I'm going to save this, and I'm going to stop my share and stop my recording. Once you complete this part, go ahead and keep working on the subcomponents, and there will be a video for those as well.